For someone like me who's been doing photography for a little bit over a year now, I think one of the most amazing things that has happened to me has to be seeing my photo published on the cover of a magazine. But what's most interesting about this process of me trying to get my photo published in a local magazine was that I don't think the photos that I consider to be my best photos would actually have any chance of being on this. So let me go over what I did to get my photo published in this magazine. And there's actually only two things. One is to take a great photo, and the second is to get it published in the magazine. And I know the second step kind of seems redundant, but let me explain that a little bit better. Let's start off with the second step, which is to actually figure out a way to get our photo published. Now, there are different ways that you can go about it. A lot of magazines do have the ability for you to just send your photos in and they'll be considered. But some magazines, including this one, had a photo contest as well, in which people would submit photos and then the editors go through those photos to pick out different photos to put on the cover of their magazines. Now, not all the photos that win actually end up on the magazine, and actually this photo didn't win any part in the contest at all, but it did grab the attention of the editors because they realized how well it fit into what they were trying to do. And that brings me to my next point, which is you really have to identify what it is that the magazine is looking for. You have to understand who the audience of the magazine is and what type of emotion the magazine editors are trying to create with the photos that they put on their cover. Those magazines that do accept photo submissions will likely have some form of guidelines into what they're trying to look for in the photo. And I'll be honest, actually, I entered this contest last year as well, but there I completely ignored these guidelines and chose photos to submit that I enjoyed, but wouldn't really do well in a magazine such as this. One of the ways to actually think about what would actually work for a magazine cover is to go back and take a look at the other photos or the other covers of the same magazine in previous issues. This magazine is obviously a local magazine, and so the audience is going to be people from Pennsylvania. Most of the articles and the pictures in this magazine and in other issues of the magazine are more about the culture and the history and the local areas in Pennsylvania. So the focus and the emotion is pretty warm. They're not looking at very edgy photos, which actually would do well on something like Instagram. They're looking for photos that create a sense of warmth in the viewer. But more than that, they're looking for things that people in Pennsylvania would be able to connect to. Pennsylvania is full of farms and fields. It has a rich cultural and historical background, and a lot of the different subjects that are presented in previous issues really highlighted that as well. Even my photo highlights the windy roads going through the dense forests that are pretty common for anyone who's lived in Pennsylvania. And so that really connects well with the viewer, that really connected well with the editors, which is another reason they chose to use this as a photo. But going even further into the nuance of a magazine, you have to consider when they publish, do they publish with certain themes? And this magazine specifically does use the seasons as a theme. A photo like this, which showcases the vibrancy of fall in Pennsylvania, was primed to be a good candidate for the fall issue of this magazine. So using this analysis, I picked photos that I thought would do well in the competition, but also photos that I think would look good on the front page of a magazine. But where did all those photos come from, right? I didn't go out and take photos specifically for this magazine. I didn't even keep this magazine in my mind when I was out there taking photos. In the set of things that make for a good photo, there's a subset of things that make for a good magazine photo, specifically for this magazine. It wouldn't do well with a very abstract photo because it's trying to draw the viewer into the photo and thereby drawing them into the magazine itself. Usually with abstract photos, we're more focused on the patterns and the designs and the colors, and it's not really apparent how that ties to what the magazine would be about. Where for this magazine, we need a subject that really ties well with the concept of Pennsylvania. This type of magazine requires it to have a strong subject on the cover. So even though some of my most favorite landscape photos of my local areas have been a little bit more quieter, have been photos in which the subject isn't readily apparent, but because of the lighting and because of other compositional tools, it appears very aesthetic. Those photos would not do well on the cover of this magazine, and so I just left them out. But it's not just enough to have a subject that highlights the concept of the magazine. You really have to take it a step further to make it a good photo, and that's where the rest of my photography experience comes in hand. Now, I want to showcase the subject, and so I have to use compositional tools that really draw attention to the subject. And here is a leading line. It starts off and takes prominence in the foreground and leads directly into the center of the photo. The other compositional tools which are meant to help you create balance in the photo, but tools like leading lines or the rule of odds or negative space would be most helpful in trying to really emphasize the subject. So we have the subject, we have the different composition set in place, and to tie it all together, you still need amazing light and amazing conditions. And there's really no good shortcut to doing this besides going time and time again to your local landscapes and exploring them at those times when the lighting is perfect. And for me, I focus primarily on golden hour and fog. Even this photo was taken right after a fog. There's no harsh lighting, there's no sharp shadows. There's a slight layer of mist in this photo that really enhanced the colors of the fall leaves. All right, so we figured out what type of photos the magazine was actually looking for. We also figured out how to take good photos. But then there's a third step, which is how do you take good photos of local areas? The landscape around us can be incredibly boring, and for us amateur photographers, it can be difficult because we do have a lot of other responsibilities as well. So how do we actually take beautiful photos of the boring areas that we live in the time that we have? So check out this video actually where I navigate through my local landscapes and wind up taking beautiful photos with something as simple as my phone.